I'm Randy Neal, and I am the National Field Director for CUFI, and we're going to take a look at Lesson 11. I'm a little bit biased about Lesson 11 because it really helps to connect the dots and fill in the blanks on understanding the complexity of the conflict in the Middle East and really just Israel's role there in the Middle East. At the end of Lesson 11, hopefully you're going to have a much better understanding on the founding of the state. You're going to have a much better grasp on how the War of Independence really was kind of ensued, and then also just what's the impact of the founding of the state in the region. First of all, we have to really appreciate the fact that as you look at all the lessons in the Israel course, but no less the case for Lesson 11, is just that we really take a look and realize that God is using Israel to demonstrate that you can trust His word. He uses predictive, prophetic scripture that foretells what He's going to do and how He's going to do it. And it's not all blessings and good news sometimes. We're going to take a look also at Psalm 83 in just a second, where He forewarns that there will be enemies against Israel that will raise their hands. But let's just take a look at Isaiah 66. Can a nation be brought forth at once? As soon as Zion travailed, she also brought forth her sons. A nation was born in a day. That's exactly what millions of Christians and Jewish folks across the world believe that happened on May 14th of 1948, where a nation was born in a day. And she went into labor after she gave birth, when her Arab neighbors around her actually sought to cast every last Jew into the sea. It's important to realize that the Arab leaders of the day forecast that the war was going to be a massacre of historic proportion. They were liking what they were intending to do. That was going to be essentially like the casting out of the Crusaders out of the Holy Land, where it was going to be blood running in the streets. It didn't go exactly the way that they thought, but it's very, very important for us to take a step back and really look at why did the war ensue? What was the root cause of the war, and is that indeed still the root cause of the conflict today? And it's arguable that it is, and that is Arab rejection of a Jewish state. The Arab nations absolutely refused, even though it meant that they would have their own state for the Palestinian Arabs. They did not want the transaction to include having to recognize a Jewish state, and they rejected it all out. One of the caveats that's extremely elusive, whether it be in the college classroom or it seems to also be a fact that has been missed by most of our journalists today when they're covering the Middle East, and that is the fact that Arab leaders were so confident of their would-be victory over the Jewish inhabitants of then Palestine that they were urging the Arab residents of the area to get out of the way, flee, get out of your home. We're going to come in a few days. We're going to cast every last Jew into the sea, and you'll be able to come back to your home and take theirs too. Of course, it didn't work out that way. The Arabs were urging their fellow Arabs that were residing in the region to get out of the way so that they could come in. Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and primarily Iraq. Iraq were among the most vicious when they came in to really just make sure that there would not be the establishment of a Jewish homeland in then Palestine. Appreciate the fact that just recently it had been the center, the epicenter of the Ottoman Empire, of the Arab Emirate, for about 400 years. And when it fell to actually have a Jewish state declared right in the center of that was considered such an abomination that it did not only impact the immediate area of what was called Palestine and would soon become Israel, but it affected all of the Jewish communities in North Africa and the Middle East, because there were communities there that predated Islam, whether it be in Yemen or whether it be in Iraq or Iran. There were Jewish communities that had been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, but when news of the establishment and the Declaration of Independence of Israel hit, all of a sudden there was no place to vent the angst of that horrible abomination, and so that anger was turned and vented directly towards those local Jewish communities, and they were expelled with really little more than the shirt on their back. So as you have Arabs that are warning their brothers and sisters to get out of harm's way, in which many of the cases they did, in some cases the Jewish inhabitants there were telling their Arab neighbors, don't leave, stay and become citizens of the new Jewish state, you'll have every right that a Jewish Israeli is going to have. Some of them took them up on their offer, others did not take them up on their offer. So we take a look at the refugees. You've got refugees, about 700,000 of the Arab refugees, and the United Nations actually forms UNRWA, which is actually dedicated to, it's the largest entity of the United Nations, and it serves just one ethnic group. You've got 700,000 refugees from the Palestinian people. To this day, there's probably 35,000 to 50,000 of those that are still alive today. But because of UNRWA and because it is a perpetuating inherited status, they claim that there's over 5 million Palestinian refugees. Meanwhile, you've got about 850,000 Jewish refugees that are coming out of North Africa and the Middle East. That most of them are going into Israel, some of them elsewhere into the United States and elsewhere. But as soon as they come in, they do not retain as refugees. They become citizens of the stand that is absorbing them. But this narrative remains today. The refugee status, the right of return that's claimed to demographically upend the nation of Israel by population is used to this day for the sole purpose of demonizing and delegitimizing Israel. You take a look at the borders that from the nations that were drawing back in 1949. It's called the Green Lines or the Armistice Lines. Those green lines were actually just markers on a map, but today you can stand near the Syrian border, near the Lebanon border, and you can literally see where the desert, ends on the Arab side, and Israel begins because of the lush agricultural development, where it is quite literally a green line. It's been said that understanding Israel is not complicated. Actually, understanding Israel isn't complicated if you know the facts. And Lesson 11, the entire Israel course, really is an arsenal of facts. They say that when you're defending Israel in the United States, whether it's around the dinner table at home or whether it's on the college campus, that really what you're combating are lies, an anti-Israel narrative, often an anti-Semitic narrative. And when you're combating lies, truth is your weapon and facts are your ammunition. And so we hope that you will really take the time to invest, to load up by studying the Israel course. Lesson 11 should blow away a lot of fog on understanding the complexity of the conflict. And then once you do that, then you'll realize that Israel really isn't that complicated after all.